So I've been in a bit of a foul mood lately. I've been trying to figure out why. And I realize something has switched. And at 50 years old, I think the biggest thing sort of following that switch is who's going to fend for me? And then you realize at 50 years old, no one is supposed to fend for you. I'm a grown man. And of course, we've got our family and friends, got mothers, aunties, uncles, grandmothers. They can give us some things to help us move on in our lives, but ultimately it's on me. And I found that, it's just various things. People want to tell you who they are with no regard for who you are. And they think it's perfectly okay just to simply project that. And yeah, it's just not, something I have any real tolerance or patience for at this point. Some things have changed, and I think it's put me in the position where I have to fend for myself. And being here in Japan, obviously the stakes are a lot different, and in some cases higher, because obviously I'm an expat living in Japan and I don't speak the language. So I've really had to dial in terms of how to navigate situations. And yeah, when I first got here, I had to do that on my own, sort of figuring out the lay of the land. But now it's different. 6.5 years in, the stakes are a lot higher. And I tell people, the longer that you're here, the harder life gets. And it's not because life is bad. It's because there's just more that's required of you. So let's say, as it relates to administrative things, your taxes, or buying real estate or buying a car here. So what I've realized is, this thing that we hear about called intentionality. And if you're into manifestation or the laws of the universe, you know all about that. But I'm not talking about that from this perspective. I'd say sort of understanding who I am in the context of people and situations. So I've really been dialed into just these interactions with people, everything from how they respond, whether it's a smile or the way they look at you, even body language, these types of things, really down to the detail. And it's pretty interesting that I'm looking at it like that, because I don't think I've ever been so dialed in. And I know that I have to bring my best to every situation. And it's not one of these words of wisdom type things. It's again, sort of recognizing who I am, my own attributes, and what I can bring to situations. And the point is to always project my best, no matter who it is and no matter the situation. Leave things better than I found them. That's really the thing. And if people look at the interactions as mundane or nothing particularly unique, that's okay. That's on them. I can't control that, but I can focus on myself and what I bring. But at the same time, I don't dilute it. I don't water it down for anybody. I'm gonna be me. And I'm going to bring my best. That's not going to change anything. And I found oftentimes in situations that we're often forced to backpedal, and not for any good reason. In some cases, you don't know more than me. You haven't experienced anything more than me, or anything particularly unique that I haven't experienced. And yet somehow we're kept on our heels, or we're forced to backpedal. And I've just stopped that. And how I respond to it isn't conflict or retaliation, but it's being steady and really having control of myself in the situation. And I think that leads to something favorable in the end, even if the person whether it was intentional or just, sort of coincidental that this person puts you in a position to backpedal. I think you can sort of reestablish the balance. And that sort of brings me back to my other point about how I deal with people. It's sort of this kind of feeling of love, right? Like projecting love into these situations, sort of giving people a chance to be who they are. Sometimes people don't know who they are, but really sort of, again, keeping things sort of at a baseline, right? You're just trying to sort of understand where that person is and capturing them at their best, if that's even possible. But as far as fending for myself, it's like when I was in Australia back in 2014, I drove from Queensland, the Gold Coast, out to the Northern Territories, the Australian Outback. Just literally hopped in my car and decided to do that. And the interesting thing is, you get 100 miles west of the Queensland province, there's no cell phones out there. There's no Google Maps, right? It's you and the road. And let me tell you something, the Outback is big. It's about 2/3 the distance of driving across the US. Doesn't look like that on a map. But once I got out there, I had to fend for myself. There's no cars for hundreds of miles, no gas stations. Something goes wrong. If the car breaks down, if I get into an accident, right? Like, it's only me out there. I had to fend for myself. And you really have to be dialed in for that, because you're dealing with everything from kangaroo to all sorts of wildlife out in the Australian Outback. And Australia has a reputation for its wildlife. And I think that's what it is now, is this is just sort of a different game. And it's really sort of resurfaced itself at this point. And so, yeah, nobody's going to tell you, but you got to bring your best. You can't back away from it. And so, I don't know. I've kind of had this idea that, like, something's coming, I don't know if it's good or bad. Perhaps, I could die tomorrow, something from one of these skyscrapers could fall on me and it's all over. Something's coming. And I know that whatever happens, whatever the situation, I did my best. I gave my best, and I left something good behind. And hopefully, not necessarily hopefully, what I know undeniably is that the people that I've encountered, they see it and they'll remember it. That's all.